thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be looking at putting a winch into the Trailrunner. What we have to put in is this 20 kg winch servo right here, a nice spool, a hook, and some winch line. I'm actually not sure if I'm going to use this winch line or not because I have some that, well, it's orange so to match the truck and it's a little more flexible, but we shall see. So first, let's go ahead and take a look at where this winch mounts. Oh, here's the Trailrunner without the body, and we're in luck because Element went ahead and made holes here for us to mount the winch to. That's what these holes right here are for. And the upside is, in your spare parts package, you will find these little servo mounts, and these are actually to mount the servo winch. So the first step is we're going to go ahead and mount these to our servo here, and then we'll be ready to mount it to the chassis. Speaking of the servo, I went ahead and covered the wire with this sheathing here. It matches the rest of the wiring I have on the Element. This helps keep everything safer and protects the wire from getting bent, crimped, rubbed, anything like that. So, well, let's go ahead and mount the mounts to the servo, and then we'll mount the spool to it. Okay, we have some M3 screws here I got out of my parts box. It's just some black ones. I put some washers on them. That way it helps spread the load out a little bit better. So now we're going to go and thread them into these blocks right here. More than likely, these blocks won't be able to slide into the ears on the servo here, but we're tightening them down first and then backing them back out. So that way it makes threads in these pieces, so it makes it easier to put on the servos with the ears on there. That way you don't have to worry about fighting it. It just makes everything easier. Trust me on this. So we're going to go ahead and screw those down into these first and then back them back out. Just like this. And we got them screwed down in there far enough, so now we'll just back them out. And then we'll do that to the other mount. That way they'll be ready to go. And then we'll be ready to mount to the servo. There's one out, and now the other one. And the other one on this one, and then I'll just repeat this with the other servo mount. And now we will mount the ears to the servo, since we have them threaded out. Make sure for the Trailrunner here that the wire, as you put these on, is facing towards the back of the truck. That's the way they recommend it, and it'll make it a lot easier to run the wire to your receiver. So, just going to go ahead and get the screws put in here, and then we'll be ready to mount it in the truck. Start the top one first. You just need a couple threads on it. And then do the next one. Get it started. You may have to fight it a little bit, but... And then tighten them down all the way. You don't want to tighten the first one down completely yet, just make it snug. And then get this one snug, and then you can tighten them both down. If you're using a standard size servo here, these mounts, if you have them tight against the body, should line up with the holes in the Trailrunner there for the winch mount. So I'm using these washers to spread out the load so it doesn't damage the ears on the servo. Okay, we have that side tight, so we'll go ahead now and put the ears on the other side. Okay, now that we have that on, the next step is we're going to go ahead and mount the spool. Do this now because it's a lot easier to do it now than it is after you get this in the truck. So we're going to go ahead and press it on the splines like that. And then we're going to put the screw in and tighten it down. Okay, there we go. Now normally I just go ahead and tie the winch line to this and call it good, but in the case of this one right here, which is why we put it on before we put the servo in the truck, is the actual screw itself helps hold the line down. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and back the screw back out because we used it to push this down all the way on the servo. So we'll use the screw, back it out, and then we'll put the line, wrap it around the screw, after we feed it through the hole, and then push it back down in and tighten it down. Let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, screw is out. And now we will feed the winch line through the hole. This is the winch line I'm using. It's 150 pound, so it should work out great for this. So like I said, I'm going to feed it through the hole here. And see, if you notice, it goes right across the screw hole. So you could just tighten it down there, but instead I'm going to get it to come up out so I can wrap it around the screw. There we go. Now I'm going to tie a little loop in the end of it here to set the screw down through. Now that I have my little loop started, we're going to put the screw through it and then tighten it down onto the screw like so. And then tie another knot in it to hold it in place. There we go. Now I'll just cut the excess off right here and burn the end, keep it from fraying, and we'll be ready to tighten this down. Okay, there we go. Now we're ready to put the screw back down in there and tighten it back down into the winch. Now something I'm going to do here too is I'm going to take it now and kind of wrap this around again, like so. Just a little bit extra bite. You can, if you wish, put a washer on here, but I don't think we need one in this case. Okay, we're tightening it down. This time we're making it nice and tight. Okay, you could put a little bit of blue Loctite on that if you wanted to, but I don't like to do that to servos because then it can make it very, very, very difficult to get something off if you need to. So now we're ready to mount this in the truck, but now we got to do some stuff to the truck first. Let me show you the next steps. So now we got to go through the steps to access these mounting holes for the winch servo. So we'll have to flip this over. And what we're going to have to do is remove this skid plate right here. There's 2 screws here and 2 screws here. That lets us get to the front mounting hole. And then we got to remove these 2 screws right here. And that should let this swing up out of the way. So we're going to do that now. Just a warning on these bottom screws, they can be a little hard to get out because the heads might be full of dirt and mud. Just the way they're made, they scrape and bang off everything. Okay, last screw coming out. And there's the skid plate out of the way. And now we have to go and remove these 2 screws right here. Let me see here if I can show you here. If I tilt it up, see right there? There's the winch mounting screws we need. Get to them by turning the steering. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and remove these 2. Okay, the screw is just about out. There we go. And now this should just lift up out of the way. Yep. And you can get to the holes down there. Now you could probably get to it without this in the way if you're using this hole, or maybe that hole, but it's a lot easier just to flip it out of the way. Why fight something that you don't have to? Now I need to show you something that we're changing. The change I have to make is I was going to use these screws with the washers to hold the servo in, but I cannot. I mean, I guess I could, but let me show you. The hole right here is actually countersunk. So instead, I'm going to use a countersunk screw, like this one right here. These are left over from when I swapped out the receiver box. So these will work, or if you have other screws, you may have to go through your parts box to find them, or maybe order up an extra set from Element, or check your local hardware store. So these are what we're going to use to hold the servo in. So the first thing we're going to do is turn this up on its side because that will make this job a little bit easier. So now we'll take the servo and hold it in place on the other side of the chassis and line these screws up and tighten it down. This will be a little hard to do because you'll be doing it kind of blind really. But get the first hole lined up and get the screw started. Just a few threads is really all you need to start with. Okay, after we get the first few threads started, we will go and try to line up the back screw. This one will probably actually be a little more difficult, so you may need to flip the chassis up on its bottom, up on its back so that the bottom faces up. But let's give it a try this way first. There we go. Once you have it started, you can go ahead and tighten down both of them. I'm tightening up the front one because I got the rear one tight. And next I went these countersunk screws because the holes are already countersunk, and this will give better clearance for the steering. Speaking of the steering, in the future we do plan to do some upgrades to the steering, so you'll have to pay attention for that. So go ahead and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that episode or any of our other future episodes. We tend to do a lot of different RC related stuff. Okay, now that those are both tight, let's flip it over and check for fitment of the servo. Make sure it's not rubbing on anything, especially the winch spool. As you can tell, the winch spool is going to have clearance around everything, so it'll be good to go. So let's go ahead now and we'll put both skid plates back on the bottom. So we'll put the bolts back in here in this little piece here, as well as putting the skid plate back on the chassis. So let's get that done, and then we'll come back to finishing up the servo install on the top side. Okay, I got the servo mounted up here, and I was looking at it, and there's something I don't like. Let me show you what it is. This cable right here, the winch line, where it goes through the hole, I don't like the way it fits because it's going to end up rubbing this plate right here. I don't know if it's because this servo sets up a little bit higher or what. I mean, I guess it'd be okay in the long run, but I don't like the way it'd be feeding either. So if you notice right here, there's a block. This is a servo mount that I had in my parts box. This one stands the same height as the spool, so this will work perfect. If it's just a little bit shorter, it'd work fine. What I'm going to do is feed the winch line through it, and have it slightly angled, and then out the fair lead. And I think that will work better. Let me feed it through there, and let's see how it looks. There we go. I think that looks much better. It's not rubbing anything. It's a straighter shot. You know, it does have a little bit of angle down here. It's just a straighter shot. Will rub better on the fair lead. And whichever side, it should feed better up onto the winch spool. Speaking of which, now it's time for us to hook the line up here to the receiver, hook the cable up here to the receiver, and see how well this thing works. I want to test it out first, and then I will run the wiring neater than just letting it flop around. Okay, hooking it up here to the receiver box. If you saw in the other video where I added the waterproof receiver box, I labeled this W for winch. Now it's time to make use of it. Now I'm going to hook up my little 3S battery here. I am using the stock XP130 radio with this, and one thing I love about it is the third channel right here. It's off, and then it's one way and one way. Go up for one way, down for another, and in the middle it means it's off. Works perfect for a servo winch, and from what I read online, the endpoint adjustments for the third channel can adjust the speed of the winch. So let's see what happens here. Here we go, it's feeding right up on the spool. It's doing nice and even right into the middle. Let's see if what I heard about doing the endpoint adjustments is true. Let's try which way it's going here. Yep. We can speed it up or slow it down with those. That's actually pretty cool. Okay, let's let this finish winding up on here. I have about 6.5 feet of line on this spool. Should be more than I will ever need. But this way, if it ever gets broken or wore out on the part I do use, I can just let out a little bit more. Okay, there we go. Now I'm ready to put a hook on this end. So the first thing I want to do before I put the hook on there is I want to take this little piece of heat shrink tubing here and feed it up on the line. I will use this to cover the knot. Okay, now I'll put the hook on the line. And now I will tie a knot in it. Okay, now I have a nice knot made. So what I'm going to do is cut this line right here I have sticking out. I'm going to cut about half of that off. I want it just so that this heat shrink tubing will be able to cover what's left. So I'm going to cut about half of this off, and then we'll melt the end of the line. Let's go ahead and do that now. Now we melt the end of it. And now we slide the heat shrink tubing down over top of it. And now we're going to shrink that down with the lighter. Let's go nice and quick. You don't want to melt the line. Now I'll just hook this onto the bumper, onto the little D-ring there, and let's wind it in. Like so. We're good to go. Now the question is, how strong is this servo winch? Well, let's just find out. We're going to feed out some wire, some line. Let's pull it out here. Okay, let's demonstrate how strong this winch really is. I think that's plenty strong enough. If you're bound up anymore where it won't pick the truck up, let's be honest about it, you're probably going to break something. Oh, something I did forget to mention earlier, this right here, which is working fine, is just screwed down onto one of these bumper bolt screws, the ones that hold the skid plate and the bumper on, because there's enough sticking up through, that should be fine because there's no pressure on that at all. Okay, so the next step is I have to figure out how I'm going to run this wiring so it's nice and neatly tucked up out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and then come back and give you my final thoughts and any final tips. And there we go. I have now neatened up the wiring. Got nice and secure so it won't get caught in anything. And everything's neatened up here in the front. And now the only thing left to do is throw the body on and go enjoy the new winch. Something I do need to show you though is I did a little something here to the radio. Let's see if I can get it here where you can see it. I took a paint pen and wrote in and out. That way I know which way to move the switch. I don't have to stop and think about it or accidentally go the wrong way, because with this plastic bumper it could bend the crap out of it, let's be honest. So there's a little tip here, make life a little bit easier if you're using this radio. Just go ahead and put an in and out on it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope maybe it gives you some ideas or helps walk you through adding a winch to your Trailrunner or your other independent enduro vehicles. Very, very nice addition. It adds a little bit of weight up front, which is nice, but also it's nice to have a winch because in some competitions, if you use your winch, it's a lot less points than having to use the judge's winch or having to have a touch of your vehicle to ride it yourself. And also, let's be honest about it, looks pretty cool to winch up a vehicle, pull it out of a tight spot. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. We have a lot more to do this vehicle. I'm not sure what's planned next. Maybe it'll be the wheel tubs. Maybe we'll add some weights to the wheels. I don't know. Just got a bunch of stuff planned. Just got to figure out where I want to go next. And if you have any questions or comments, you can drop them down below or hit us up on Facebook or Instagram. The links there are also down below. We post a lot of stuff on Instagram that we don't post videos of. Just random pictures here and there and stuff like that. And until next time, Happy RCing.